Hi, my name's Peter Larkum, and this is Mentality Meets. So we're on day 5 of Mental Health Awareness Week, all about kindness and showing kindness to ourselves, showing kindness to other people. Today, we're going to be with Nicholas Jemetta. So this is Mentality Meets. Let's go for our normal health warning for Mentality Meets. So this is Mentality Meets, and we talk all things mental health, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's an opportunity to just realize what the reality of mental health and mental health illnesses is, but also to learn some of the tools that people have that are helping them cope with the weirdness of our world at this time. So what we need you to be aware of is that we don't know anything about you. Okay, so we don't know whether you have had mental health illnesses in the past or whether you are struggling with mental health illnesses at the moment. We don't know any of that information. So if you need help or support, can we please encourage you to contact the Samaritans on 116 123, and there will be somebody at the end of the phone who'll be able to support you and talk with you. Another option is that you have a text service called Shout, and you can text Shout to 85258. Okay, and then again, somebody will get back in contact with you and be able to offer you help and support. As far as your vulnerability goes during the session that we're talking about here, there is on the chat bar the opportunity to send me a private message. And if you want to, please do to say, Pete, this is kind of hitting some vulnerability and I could do with some help right now. And I'll do my best to help and support you. Now, there's another website out there that we are banging on about on these mentality meets called the Hub of Hope. And the website is www.hubofhope.co.uk. Now, the fascinating thing about this website is that when you put in your postcode, it will show you all the mental health support and provision in your local area. So if you're supporting people on the other side of the country, you can put their postcode in and it will show you all the mental health support in their local area too. So this is Mentality Meets. So let's kind of have a quick look back and see who we have and where in the world you're from. So we've got Joe in Hampshire this week, Dave in London, and yesterday was the charitable thing. I helped an old lady cross the road. She didn't want to cross it, but you made her. Love it, Dave. Thanks very much. Alison in North Leeds this week, Helen in Didcot, Oxfordshire. Give some items to the NHS Wellbeing boxes about 2 weeks ago. Kay in London yesterday. I also run a charity. Paul King in Wantage. Hi, how you doing? Last week was the charitable thing. Sonia Chippenham. Can't really think of something I did that was charitable, but I did do something nice. You know what? That works for me. Niceness is charity in my world. Charity, mate. Chandy in Bournemouth. Last night, I dressed up as a chicken and ran around the block to celebrate Clap for Carers. Absolutely awesome. Carol and Canning. I'm in New Forest, Hampshire. Carol Canning in the New Forest, Hampshire. Every week I try and do something charitable to help someone. And Rob in West Sussex. Yesterday I offered to help those I know whose jobs are at risk. Absolutely awesome, everyone. Thank you for joining the conversation. So just a reminder, if you are willing, please do click on your video so as we can see your lovely faces. We've got lots of people without videos at the moment. And as far as kind of the videoing process of this goes, it's always lovely to see the people who are taking part. So let me just take this opportunity now to introduce you to Nicholas Jemetta. Nicholas, can I just ask you to give us a bit of a roundup of who you are and your world context and what it is that has brought you to where you are today, and kind of how you're engaging with these Mentality Meets sessions. So give us a little bit of information about you.
Sure. So hi everyone, I'm Nick Jemetta. I should probably start by addressing why I'm dressed like this. That probably makes the most sense before I do a bit of backstory. So I've only kind of been active in the mental health space and sharing my lived experience for a couple of years now. This is not my day job. And when lockdown started, Joe Wicks, who you probably all know, is doing Fancy Dress Friday. So I was dressing up with my children and I was kind of working out, and for whatever reason, I decided to start wearing some of that fancy dress to work as somewhat of a social experiment. And the effect of doing so was pretty dramatic, both on my own well-being and how I felt during lockdown, but also on these kind of calls. So in the role I do, I work in a technology and digital role. I'm on a lot of calls and it can get quite monotonous. And I think, especially for people out there that don't have a young family like I do, I think that's really challenging for their well-being. And I found that by wearing these kind of random costumes, that the nature of the conversation was changing. It was more relaxed, more informal. I was getting to know people a bit better, and we were actually having more open dialogue around mental health. And by allowing people to laugh at me, it was helping them kind of have a smile on their face. So I never intended this to become anything more than that. But I then had this thought, well, if I can have that effect on a Friday, why don't I try and run this for more than that? So for the month of May, every single working day, so it's 19 working days, I've been dressing up in a different costume every day. I've discovered the custom backgrounds, which is sort of amplifying the costumes. So the rule is I get dressed in the morning. My children really love it, and it's kind of a bit of a highlight of their day. And I sit in whatever costume I'm in all day. Every call, no matter who's on it. So a couple of days ago, I was dressed as Harry Potter, and I was in a meeting with our new CEO. So it makes no difference who's on the call. The video's on, I'm in costume. I've done, I think this is day 15 now. I've got 4 to go. The effect of what I've done now has been massive, both for me personally, for my family, my friends, our road. We've got a WhatsApp group, and kind of I'm engaging with that. Through my kind of social channels, I've been getting good impact. But I think the thing that's been most amazing for me is I've also been doing a bit of fundraising. So I'm raising money for NHS, Alzheimer's Society, because that's close to our family, and Mental Health UK. I started with a target of about £500. I thought that was ambitious. I'm now at £1,300, which has been pretty mind-blowing. I hope I can share the link afterwards, and I'd love for you all just to share the link. I'm not expecting donations, although they're appreciated. My new target now is £1,500. In addition to that, I'm hoping to try and get some press out of this. So I can't promise anything, but I am in touch with a few organisations like the BBC, and I'm just crossing my fingers I can get a little bit of coverage. Hopefully this is a good news story in lockdown, which I never expected to be. I never did any of this for the press. It was about raising awareness, raising money, and just having a bit of fun. I also, and this idea only came to me yesterday, so you can kind of see a lot of this is a little bit hand to mouth. I'm also trying to contact the Guinness World Records, because I'm wondering if there might be a world record I can try and set around the most number of people dressed in fancy dress on a video call, for example. I have less than a week to try and make that happen. I don't know anyone at Guinness World Records, so if anyone can help me with that, or tell me it's an idea that will never fly, then please do let me know. So that's a little bit about kind of what I'm doing and why I'm dressed like this. I can see a few smirks going around the room, so it's clear.
I love that, Nick. That is what an amazing thing to do. So yes, I'm very happy for you to share the link, and when it comes up on the chat bar, can you just kind of copy it so as you've all got access to it, and let's just bang it out on social media and do everything that we can support. If you can give, amazing. If you can't, just share the link as much as you can. All right, next question out to you as the audience. When was the last time you got dressed up in fancy dress? Now I've already realized that Chandy's already done that just yesterday.
Yeah, I did think that. Good on you.
But when was the last time you got in fancy dress, and what did you dress up as? I was trying to think about this as you were sharing, Nick, and I came to the conclusion that I did a barbecue with a local church who are trying to feed students on the pub crawl through the city. And so I kind of thought, hey, what a great idea. And so I was cooking, and I turned up to this first thing, and they gave me an outfit to get dressed up in. So it was part of Halloween. They gave me this outfit, and they dressed me as Jesus. And the ironic part about this is that as I was dressed as Jesus outside this church doing flipping burgers for these students, a group of students turned up as Roman soldiers. And now this is stuff that you can't write in a story, but it was just brilliant. That there was kind of me getting wrestled by a whole load of actual Roman soldiers while I was dressed as Jesus in this context of a church setting. It was just bizarre. So when was the last time you got dressed up in fancy dress, and what did you get dressed up as? So we've got Freddie Mercury, Band-Aid, absolutely awesome, Emmy. Thanks very much. 2 weeks ago for the family Zoom as a nun. Ah, very nice. So that's Carol. So daily outfits. Oh, that's you, Nicholas. I'm kind of daily outfits on your Twitter and LinkedIn. So yeah,
sorry,
go and check Nicholas out.
My publicity.
Yep, absolutely. Do it. Rob got dressed up as a penguin for a charity run. Dave just says, don't do fancy dress. I dressed as Charlie Chaplin and people thought I was Hitler. It's not a good look. Kay doesn't think she's ever been in fancy dress. Okay.
Give it a go.
Right, that needs to, when Nicholas does this world record for fancy dress, Kay, can I encourage you to try and find something that you can get dressed up at? I love you got a double thumbs up on that, Kay. I like it. 50th, Chrissy Hind from Melissa a couple of years ago as Santa for the Santa Run from Paul, and Joe got dressed up as Mary last Christmas. Was that like for a Christmas play? To actually go and get dressed up as Mary. Love it. My kids go as the shepherds, apart from my one son who always has to go as a fairy. We tell him that fairies aren't actually in the Christmas story, but it's the only thing. Got tutus, wings, and everything. So we dress it up as an angel, but he's definitely the fairy. So Guinness World Records. Does anyone have any contact or know of any way to get hold of the Guinness World Records? That's another question to go out there for the chat out there. So Nicholas, let's come back to you. So I want to just ask, in the context of mental health and Mental Health Awareness Week, and the fact that we are on Mentality Meets and talking with people who have had lived experience of mental health illnesses, can you just give us a little bit of a story around your personal experience with this thing called mental health and mental health illnesses?
Yeah, of course. So I think I said earlier, my day job is not this. The work I do in mental health is a bit of a side project, but it's become a passion and a kind of a lived purpose. My own experience was a long time ago. I'm 36 now. My own experience was during university. So kind of prior to university, I grew up kind of quite introverted, very anxious, very self-conscious, really struggled with the image of my own body. I struggled to fit into what I thought society's model was for what it meant to be a man, and I never felt like I fitted that. And then I kind of took all that baggage, I suppose, into university, and then I felt this intense pressure to be what the lads thought you needed to be, which was, in my mind, it's the stereotypes: drinking beer, going out on the pool, not doing much work. And I was the total opposite to that. And that pressure, I think it just built, and it had been building for much of my life. So kind of second year of university, I think I was probably, I never had it diagnosed, but I think I was probably suffering from depression, and I was drinking a lot, and I didn't connect the dots at the time, and that made things go pretty sideways for me pretty quick. And I was sort of experiencing suicidal thoughts for about 6-7 months. So I kind of never made any attempts, but I came very close, and I was kind of in a very desperate, kind of dark place. And back when I was at university, so this was sort of 2002, mental health wasn't talked about as publicly and as openly as it is today. And I just didn't know how I was feeling. I was terrified by it. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't share what I was going through. I locked my feelings away, and I buried it. And to be honest, a lot of people say, well, how did you kind of work your way out of it? I don't know how much intention there was, other than the fact I decided I did want to live, and that I did have more value than maybe I thought I did. And subconsciously, I just started building in routines just to try and make me feel a bit better, trying to do exercise, trying to connect with people, trying to see that actually I had value, and that, you might not believe it, but as an introvert now, I'm much more, I try to put myself ahead of the joke. So at school, I always was very sensitive to people making comments about me, whereas now I'll be the first one to sort of throw a bit of a comment out there, because if I can get ahead of that kind of self deprecation has become a real asset for me. So fast forward 2 years ago, so I'd never thought about that experience, and an opportunity came up totally unexpectedly where I was asked to share my story. So I shared my story, and the result of that and kind of the response of the audience has unlocked this new purpose. So since then, I've set up a colleague-led network at my organisation. I've been vlogging, I've joined the Speakers Collective, I've got it here, I won an award with This Can Happen. I'm now judging This Can Happen. I'm up for 2 more awards this year. It's kind of been just this unbelievable roller coaster that was never expected. So everyone's journey is different, but my journey feels kind of quite unique, because 2 or 3 years ago, this was not a thing, I would never have been talking to all these incredible people and meeting all these amazing people. So that's kind of just a snippet. I hope it kind of makes sense. I know everyone's story is different, but I'm told that my story has a level of kind of relatability. So hopefully that gives you some insight.
No, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. And I think what I love about it is kind of what you just said in the middle of it, when you don't quite know how you got out of it. And when people are struggling with mental health illnesses, quite often, we've talked about this in lots of different settings, they often don't know that they're struggling. It's the other people around them who begin to notice where that they are having more bad days than good. But actually, when you're in it, it's quite difficult to have that acknowledgement, because it's how your life makes sense at that time. And another thing from a training perspective is that we often say one of the key things for recovery of mental health illnesses is time. That time in itself is a good healer. And what I hear from your story is that actually kind of as you began to realize that you were in a negative place, you started to build that routine, you started to move yourself forward. And I just find that fascinating, because it's so hopeful that when people are struggling, we know that recovery is quicker when you get access to the help and support, but it also shows that recovery is possible even when you aren't accessing the help and support. And so there is still the ability to re-find those good days in the midst of the bad. And I love that about that story, Nick. Thank you for sharing. And I also love the fact that you've turned this into your ability to share and raise the awareness, because I think there are lots of people who have had experiences in their life where they have had more bad days than good. So another question out into the audience. Let's kind of move away from mental health diagnosis, but let's talk about those low times in our life. When we've gone into those low times, we may not have got a diagnosis for it, but we have managed to get ourselves back to being okay and having the good days. And often when we think about this, it's around grief. So kind of those times of our lives. So has anyone on the chat ever experienced a period of just really low time in your life? Not diagnosis of mental health illnesses, just low time in your life. It may be circumstantial, it may be due to just whatever. But from what I'm hearing from Nick's story is that there was this expectation of being like the other lads, and therefore getting into the pattern of the behavior of drinking lots and going out lots and other things like that. So let's kind of see what people are saying. So yes, just I'm just going to go down the list. So yes. So Dave's saying this year has hardly been a bed of roses for most of us, has it? There's a lot of bad stuff going on. Emmy saying about the postnatal process. And then Melissa just says, yep, who hasn't? And I think this is so key, Nick, and I think this is what your story is allowing people to recognize, because so often in the conversation of mental health, we talk about mental health and mental health illnesses, not just those bad days. And when bad days become bad weeks, how do we begin to acknowledge it for ourselves, and how do we reach out for help and support? So a question I've got for you then, Nick, is in the context of you raising the awareness of your story, how have you found people's reactions? Has it all been good? Has it all been bad? Has there been a mixture of good and bad? And what's the context of people's response to your story?
I guess I've been quite fortunate up until now that the reaction has been nothing but positive. I mean, I've shared my story at work in front of my line managers. I've just tried to be quite pure to my original intention, which is to try and help people that are in a similar position, and to kind of demonstrate that, you know, to your point, when the bad days turn into the bad weeks and you suffer that period of mental ill health, even if it's not diagnosed, that it doesn't stop you achieving anything. Because I remember when I was going through those times, when you're really low and you have no value, you can't see a future. I'm married now with children, and there was a period in my life when I thought that was never going to happen. You know, I've got a career that I'm pretty proud of. Again, there was a period where I just made an assumption because of how I felt that I was never going to become anything. I guess that's why I'm trying to share my story, is to make it clear that that's just not the case. I've been back to my old university, which was kind of one of the best days of my life, to just give back. And again, the reaction was, I guess, one of people being grateful that I'm relatable and that I'm just trying to be as honest as I can. So on LinkedIn, I've shared when I've had anxiety attacks, and that made me feel pretty uncomfortable because my peers are connected to me. But I thought, well, actually, if I'm going to live and breathe by this ability to explain how I'm feeling and be truthful about it, then I've got to sort of step into the light and be brave and not kind of self-censor in a way. The reactions of my family and friends have been really great. The most difficult part of this has been telling my parents. So I only told them at the end of last year, and they had no idea because I'd never told anyone. You know, I think they knew I was maybe struggling and didn't have the confidence, but when I told them how far it had gone, that was the hardest bit, because now as a parent, their immediate reaction, which I can understand, was they blamed themselves. And they asked me, what could we have done? How could we have helped you? And that was, I needed a good amount of whiskey that night to sort of summon the courage. Whereas when I've shared my story elsewhere, I just need a glass of water and I'm all good. But yeah,
I think that's really
telling that close stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really telling and really truthful, because sometimes it's the telling them your most loved ones that's the hardest, and this is something which I don't think I've ever really thought about. And the reason why I say that is because from a training perspective, we often say it's the people closest to you, the people that you know well enough that you know what their normal level of weird is. Because I personally believe that we all have our weirdness. There's no such thing as normal, but there is your normal level of weird. And when that begins to shift and change, then how do we notice and how do we reach out? But I've never really thought about the context that actually sometimes it's the people who you are closest to that it's the hardest to talk to about it. And I don't know kind of why that is, whether there's a level of shame on it or what, or whether it's just kind of you don't know what their reaction is going to be. But I've just never really kind of thought that it takes that much more courage to talk to your nearest and dearest. And I just find that fascinating. Sorry, thank you. I kind of butted in on you with that.
It's true. It was telling a bunch of, I think the first time I shared my story publicly was at work, and I expected a handful of people. I think we had about 150 people rock up. You know, it was empowering, and I didn't have the same level of emotion. So I think you're right. There was something much more difficult about telling my nearest and dearest.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the chats here. So Carol's saying it, talking so good. It's just realizing that you can and that someone is there to talk to. And unless you've actually been for yourself, not everyone really understands. But I think what I love about this story, Carol, is that more people kind of get that bad days than the mental health illness side of things. And that low mood, which is where Nick is at the moment. And Emmy, you said you don't want to hurt them, and that kind of you cried so much with strangers during that recovery process. And then Carol saying it's an illness that you can't see easily, and Rob saying telling family is so loaded with emotional baggage, you know, and there is so much else going on, and just kind of being aware of that. And I suppose kind of what I want to tap into at this point is for those of you who are on this call, who are trying to figure out, how do I tell people that I'm struggling? How do I tell people that it's actually got really bad and I'm really struggling to find the good days at the moment? From what I'm hearing from Nick's story and the personal perspective that I have is, please don't be afraid of sharing. Find someone that you can talk to. And I want to actually kind of say, you know what, get in contact with me. You've got my email address because you've all been kind of connecting to Mentality Meets. So let's start the conversation. If you feel like you've never been able to do it before, don't hide away, because the quicker you get access to help and support, the quicker the recovery process is. Okay, so let's not kind of hide it away. Let's shout about it and let's get the support that we need. So Nick, we're on 11:27. We've got 3 minutes before the end of the session. I can't quite believe I haven't even looked at the time. on this call. And so 11:27. Can you please put down your gift link again? I know you put it further up in the chat, but let's go and just bang it out again now.
Thank you. I will do
And
that.
so anything else that you kind of want to say as a rounding up process for this chat, Nick?
Well, firstly, thank you everyone for joining. I hope you found something in what I've shared useful, and I hope that my silly appearance has given you a smile. All my outfits that I've posted on my channel. So I think you mentioned earlier your son likes to dress as, is it the fairy at Christmas? I did an angel.
Brilliant.
That was one where I showed the most skin. So there have been a couple that weren't safe for work. So I actually dressed in those at the weekends when we had friend Zoom calls, but they won't ever be going public. Yeah.
My brother's daughter turned 6 this week, and he sent a family WhatsApp message of their under the sea themed birthday party where he was dressed as a mermaid. Now this is something a brother should never have to see, to be fair. So can I just encourage you, don't dress as a mermaid, please. just don't do it.
That's a good health warning right there.
So there's the gift page for Nicholas Jemetta on the chat bar. If you are able to, please, let's just kind of give, let's do something in the context of that. If you can't give, totally understand that finances at the moment are tight for a lot of people. So don't feel like there's any pressure to give, but if you can, let's just kind of bang it out on our social media, stick it out on your whatever your social media platform is. Email your friends and your family about it. And yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for your openness and your honesty today, Nick. That's been really, really helpful. Thank you for joining us in the cockpit of your fighter plane and for dressing as Maverick today. That's one of my all-time favorite films. And yeah, totally appreciate it. So I think this is oh, hang on.
There's another one.
What just happened there?
I'm kind of I could do a little bit of Terminator as well. So I've got my block today.
That's quite a scary image on
my
that
children
one.
would be terrified of that. Hence why I had to go Top Gun and not Terminator.
Yeah, but I like the fact that your face is glitching as well.
I know,
so
right?
There's definitely a Terminator kind of process going on with this.
This is like 2 outfits in one. I'm gaming the system.
Brilliant. And you know what? It's now 11:30. So I'm going to wrap this up and say this has been Mentality Meets. This has been Nicholas Jemetta. I have been Peter Larkum. Thank you so much for your time. If you need to sign off, as always, now is the time to do so. So take care. God bless.
Thanks, everyone.
And bye-bye now. All right. So there is our official ending. Absolutely done. Nicholas, thank you so much for today. What a great story and great outfits going on.
Great conversation. Thank you for having me.